Okay, we're gonna have a few speeches. First, Sagar Tandon is partner at Beyond Impact VC, investing in animal-free, carbon-negative and nature-positive solutions. He also works to promote gender-smart investing. Please, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so hi, I'm Sagar. I'm part of a fund called Beyond Impact. We invest in animal-free solutions globally. We started investing since 2017-18, started by Claire Smith, who has been a vegan for close to 35 years, and she was looking for solutions for herself to start investing into a future which is much more humane. And that's where she came across and actually launched her own ETF also called VEGN ETF in US, and which has close to 120 million in assets, which was giving an option for people who are aligned on the animal-free lens that they want to have a portfolio in US, in S&P 500, which is without this. Then the other thing that we actually start realizing that we cannot create impact just by investing passively into these S&P 500 companies minus these animal-based companies. And then Claire thought of why not launch a impact VC fund. So build a small portfolio in 23. The thesis, I would say, in some sense, it is around this. Can the future of food be kinder, cleaner, healthier? And I think that's the thing that we have been exploring, and shall we do it, and who all is doing it, and can we actually back them up? And today I thought, let me talk a little bit about which is very close to my heart, because I also come from a research field, but I was doing research in quantum computation before, that people have complete misunderstanding when they actually look at the GMO thing, they look at the cell agriculture thing. Is not just the most sustainable or cruelty-free thing, but it's also the most natural thing. We were playing with the soil before, we were doing crossbreeding, having the seedless bananas. We won't be eating bananas at all if we were having just those wild bananas. To now, I actually really like that everybody was talking about, and for some reason I also put this term as brewing proteins. Whether it's brewing proteins or brewing fat or brewing other forms of ingredients. Yes, in case of cell culture, it might be a little bit different, but it is some sort of a brewing. It's happening inside these stainless steel containers. But it's also very natural, because before we were doing crossbreeding, which is outside, now we are actually going inside and seeing, can we play with the microbes? Can we play with the yeast? Can we play with the cell? And playing with the cell, playing with the nature does not always mean that you do the harmful thing. And this is the thing I think we need to teach the next generation, because I think, personally, if you ask me, organic is complete BS in that way if you look at it. Like, if we have more scientific tools to look at the microbial level at the cell level, why not look at it and actually understand the gene pool and everything much better and have better proteins and better ingredients in place? So yeah, I actually start talking so much. So yeah, so we are a Luxembourg-based impact VC fund. We are an Article 9 fund. We have invested in close to 30 companies. We invested in a number of CPG brands also. In UK, Meatless Farms, gone bust. Wicked Kitchen, gone bust. So we have actually moved quite a lot, and that's why it is written that we are focusing more on humane, decarbonizing, regenerative. We have also changed a lot of words. People were talking about, should we use animal-free? Should we use vegan? Actually, technically speaking, our fund name is Beyond Impact, CCAV, RAFE, Vegan 1. Now we just don't mention it at all. Because if we say that, people would be like walking away in the complete different direction. We thought this is the best regenerative way to actually produce food. So we started using the word regenerative. It is definitely humane. If you say that there is humane meat, I think these are humane proteins or humane fat or whatever. And it's decarbonizing. It's actually decarbonizing. And I was telling Carolina also that I think there has a framework been released for green bonds to be launched. And this is another thing that we need to keep thinking about. How can we mobilize different kinds of financing mechanisms for this space in alt protein and nuclear, whatever, but definitely in alt protein, when we talk about a lot of biomanufacturing and stuff, where there is a climate impact. Right now, it is not classified as many times that it is actually decarbonizing. But sometimes it is twice decarbonizing. For example, if you look at using waste biomass which is coming from a beer factory, you extract proteins and fibers, it could have even giving back in terms of like reducing the carbon footprint even much further. If you use microalgae, it's actually doing carbon sequestration also. So it's really decarbonizing industry, and we need to push quite a lot of agenda around that. So here, if you read, like we have said, it's also not just a problem of animal cruelty, sustainability. What we are hearing from a lot of corporate clients, why they are interested, supply chain is broken. Like Grupo Bimbo, when I was giving as an example, they actually hate egg supply chain. It's so volatile market. They're like, if you give me a better protein source or better protein ingredient, they will replace it. So corporates are actually looking for solutions which could be better in terms of supply chain, and not so much volatile in terms of prices. So yeah, and now we are actually reaching a point where there is some sort of cost parity which we are able to achieve. So we invest in 4 key areas. We're not just doing food, but this is ReBoot food. So advanced nutrition, what we call it, human and pet nutrition. We look at ingredients, which is subset of this. Pharma, what we call it, without drug discovery. One important piece that we try to look, I think, which is also aligned with WePlanet, and I don't know how much you guys are looking at, is something we call it animal testing alternatives. So human organs on chips. There are a number of companies in the Northern European belt. We have invested in one in US right now, but I think we should be looking at this space quite a lot because it is for the drug testing, but it's also for the food testing, it's for the cosmetic testing. So animal testing alternatives is a very, very interesting market that more investors should be looking at. But a lot of investment right now are invested by deep tech investors in this space. And also we look at some personal care ingredients like collagen and keratin, which are also sometimes coming from the animal sources. So that could be better. And then materials, which are biomaterials for replacement and all those things. We all know that, like the food production, the food waste, the water and land uses, the climate and pollution that is happening with our present food system, is the best argument for the climate. And our biggest struggle is, even I was asking Solar Food guys also, because right now, and I was talking to the ministry person also as well, was there's a lot of pushback on all protein overall, not just from the market, is probably more from the investor circles, that there's very little capital is going. The thesis around climate is still quite weak. A lot of money actually goes into the energy space still. What we call it that SDG 12 becomes very important in all of this, what we are discussing, which is responsible consumption and production. How do we produce the next generation of food, materials, biopharma, ingredients? So that's really important to have a strong climate lens being put. And if we can achieve the climate lens with cost parity, is unbeatable. I think that's where I think a lot of homework needs to be done to have more climate funds looking at it. My pessimism is a little bit coming from a lot of climate funds are not looking at this space because the hype cycle is gone. So let's see what will happen in the future. Yeah, so supply chain is for disruption, as I was talking about the egg market piece, which is, it's very vulnerable. There are many cases like H1N1 happened, and so many culling of birds happen because some virus has been floating around. So, and this leads to something which, again, corporates and big conglomerates in the space, they don't like these choke points. And the good part is when you think about cellular agriculture, precision fermentation, plant-based sources, you don't have those vulnerabilities. So it's a very, very, very strong economic resilience argument, and it's also a supply chain disruption problem that actually caused with the animal-based stuff that could be dealt with. So that's what we say, that animal supply chain is not at risk, it's actually breaking apart right now. And we need to bring this argument also a lot in the, because when we say that we need to mobilize more capital for this, we need to have a strong economic positioning. What we have learned, even with the Tesla situation, also I'll just mention that nobody wants to pay a green premium. BYD said you don't need to pay a green premium at some point at scale. But again, you need to achieve the scale. But some of these companies can actually do cost parity right now. So we need to have a very, very strong economic argument, supply chain argument, and all of this. And yeah, I don't think so. A lot of these corporates actually care about the protein is coming from the animal source or the protein is coming from the plant-based source. They would switch. I'll give one example about stevia, also, which is precision fermentation based. No, means like stevia is originally from the stevia, but was it DSM and Cargill actually set up one of the largest stevia precision fermentation plants to produce sweetener, stevia sweetener. So most of the stevia sweetener a lot of people have actually comes from precision fermentation. People have it. Nobody calls it precision fermentation stevia sweetener. Same thing with insulin also. Insulin is called insulin when it used to come from the pigs, now pig blood, now it comes from precision fermentation. So I think wherever the animal supply chain is at risk, it's the same argument with the horse, and it's a better economic argument that we need to give. Yeah, and I think as we were talking about, some of these companies have been trying to commercialize, some start commercializing. Every, which is also like in Onega Bio, but Every is already start commercializing some of their egg proteins. Perfect Day has been trying to commercialize it. Geltor is commercializing their collagen proteins in the cosmetic space. They are also looking at nutraceutical space. In precision fermentation, we have seen the most commercialization also is the most mature industry, because precision fermentation is existing since 1970s, 1980s, since this insulin thing came up. Now there is a more of a thing around which proteins and molecules. I just give my own 2 cents, like companies like Perfect Day, which are also in the space of very low price proteins. They have a bit of a struggle around whey and casein. What we are seeing a lot of third wave, fourth wave precision fermentation companies, they are coming and focusing on proteins which have very high climate impact coming from animal sources, like some blood proteins, which goes into nutraceutical, goes into pharma, also proteins like lactoferrin that people have already started commercializing. There is one example I have not given called Algae Foods from Australia. Turtle Tree is also looking at lactoferrin. We are looking at another New Zealand company. Upside, good, Meatly, Forged. Weak commercialization, I will say. There has been commercialization, but it's also a bit of a gimmicky commercialization. And I was making this point, the problem these companies, not necessarily, we talk about the regulators, yes, problem, but the problem is even if these regulators have given them a free hand, they are not able to commercialize properly, because the cost parity has not been achieved, and not just cost parity, the pricing has still not been closer. What we are seeing some interesting traction, probably where proper commercialization might happen, is like bluefin tuna with Blue Nalu, which is also one of our portfolio company. Then one of our another portfolio company called Umami Bioworks from Singapore. They actually got merged with Shock Meats. Might also be looking at bluefin tuna. Again, the price point helps quite a lot, 100 to 120 euros per kg kind of products. Same thing with gourmet from France, foie gras. There's a lot of interest from all the countries which are banning foie gras everywhere. I think that's another interesting part to commercialization. So as people who are working as scientists, researchers, and I was saying to VTT also, we need to look for products that could be commercialized in next 2 to 3 years period because of the commercialization issue around the price. And interestingly, animal-derived products are just embedded everywhere. It's not just steak. And actually, somebody made that comment, it's a slow process for transformation. I would argue, yes. Maybe we should just not be looking at steak. We should also be looking at 100 other things which are embedded across the spectrum. That's what we are trying to look at. Molecular farming we have not invested in any of the molecular farming, but this could be very interesting when we talk about smallholder farmers, blah, blah, blah. Maybe the future of seeds are also like, you have rice with beef proteins in it. And then you grow rice and you eat rice. So molecular farming has its own advantages. In precision fermentation, there are different kinds of precision fermentation platforms that we are investing across. As I was giving an example of cyanobacteria precision fermentation, which is an Israeli-US company focusing around precision fermentation open ponds, which is like blue-green algae. So I think it's also interesting. AI is also, I need to throw it up as a VC, otherwise how am I VC? Which I have a fundamental issue myself, but anyway, probably I actually use ChatGPT or Kimi somewhere. AI and optimization, AlphaFold, what was that protein folding company thingy that Google, there are advantages to AI in terms of optimizing a lot of protein discovery, how we should actually be mapping some of these things. It is definitely reducing some production cycles, some testing cycles. Is it doing too much? I don't know, but a lot of our companies are also experimenting it, and I think it does improve the efficiency and optimization. Is it giving the right answer? No, but yeah, it is definitely it is definitely in the right direction to reduce the pricing. I just like to be frank. I've been a 90-day Finn, so need to think like a Finn and just be straightforward sometimes. Price parity is very, very critical. Without price parity, I have learned in my life is, yeah, it's okay, you have some early adopters, but Tesla won't be Tesla if they actually don't start going towards some sort of beyond early adopters. And I personally think for most of the food-based products that we talk about, and like, again, I give an example of whey, casein, the source of whey casein that comes from a person who is beefing up for they don't care. A lot of these things, actually, people are more concerned about the quality of the protein and probably it's cost effective or not. And there are some EU-based studies also that has actually reflected that a lot of people don't have repeated plant-based product customers also is actually because of the price. Price becomes a biggest hurdle. It's not just processed also. People eat shitload of processed food. So again, health argument is there. And we also, within the fund also, we try to look at even like, don't have too much coconut oil. And that leads to also saturated fat and stuff. So we see that. One thing I'll say on the policy side is, which is, we keep hearing about the EU on the negative side, which is true, but also I'll just say to a lot of entrepreneurs is, in Asia, there was a lot of hype, but there were no customers. There's like a lot of companies went to Singapore. There's no ask for sustainability. So that has been a tough battle. US, what is interesting, without naming some of the companies that I mentioned in the last one, a lot of the American companies are going for complete restructuring. 400, 500 million to 100 million restructured. 20 million. What I mean by restructure is the value is coming down by 10 times. 5 times, 6 times. So US is also not the best amazing market. You can be glorified and there are no investors which are investing. What is interesting, because of the climate alignment, there are a lot of funds in EU and also like sovereign funds, EIF, still looking at this space. If we can somehow nudge Brussels to have a better Brussels effect, I think EU can shine pretty well, because we say within our fund also there is a holy quadrity. The customers are asking, corporates are also looking for better ingredients. Innovators are looking for, innovators are already here because they're a good deep tech. And regulators have a good lens on climate. I think they just have been misinformed and how things are with the whole GMO space and all these novel ingredients. So if that could be handled better. Then, yeah, and then this is the thing that I started with. Like, we have always been bioengineers. Since we start discovering agriculture, we start doing crop plantation, we start manipulating plants and even animals, we made them domesticated. We did selective breeding. We got bananas, we got like wheat, rice, that all we eat is all modified, technically speaking. So the next logical step is to actually look at the cellular and microbial level. It's also like, I was at Change Now and I mentioned it very clearly, like, if we are letting our kids play with soil, which a lot of now young parents feel, science-based food. No, science-based food can be more humane and more natural. And I think we need to give this toolbox of cellular and microbial stuff to the next generation to play with, to actually create better foods. So yeah, it's truly natural. It's definitely decarbonizing, regenerative. It's the most humane food. And we are probably at the stage we are having a better understanding of nature, how actually proteins come into picture, not just proteins, but fat, amino acids. Now we are able to produce it, as the solar food guy was saying, that we were having this, was it bacteria, what they're actually using at a microbial level? which is existing for billions of years, gonna exist for billions of years. So your food come from that microbial stuff, or it comes from plants, it is still natural. Maybe we don't know how to derive food from that before, now we know how. So before we didn't know how to pluck the apple from that bacteria or microbe, now we know. And again, like, we should keep pushing our agenda. And I think the first phase of, I say there was deeply troubling stuff with the plant-based space. What happened was there was a lot of activism involved also. So I would say that that was not thinking as an early adopter. They were actually thinking that the world should go vegan. And I think a lot of people have come to realization that not necessarily the thing. So for them, whatever processing you put it, it's fine if it is not hurting the animals. But there's a huge pushback from the customer. So, but all these things, when you think about, when you put as a protein which is exactly mimic collagen, my biggest thing is, we were discussing about this, you need to still call it collagen. The source of collagen is probably not coming from the animal, but coming from the precision fermentation, which is exactly as insulin case. So yeah, so that's it. There's me. As if anybody has any question, we are actively looking at Nordics. At this point, we have made our first investment in Finland also right now in a University of Helsinki spin-out. And it's actually one argument that we keep hearing a lot is not just about proteins. It's also about other things, also about other ingredients. The company that we invested in Finland is actually focusing on alternative fat, which is doing double encapsulation. It's oleogel square technology, which reduces the saturated fat by 80%, can infuse fiber. And the good part is it's extremely clean label. And the very good part is it is cost parity to dairy fat, and it could be structured as any fat. It's a solid fat, which is based on material physics. So we are at the cusp of the ingredient transformation, that we are actually rethinking how our food comes from, how our food is being built and assembled in some way. And within us, we actually keep thinking about this protein diversification and ingredient diversification strategy. It's not just one size fits solution. For some, cell ag will work. For some, precision fermentation will work. For some, molecular farming will work. For some, maybe some other sources will work. So we are investing across the spectrum. Very, very excited about it. Anybody has any questions? I would be. Clay is the founder. Clay Smith is the founder. I joined as a partner. She's the one who started that VEG and ETF also. Yeah.
Hi, I've got the mic. Thank you so much for that. I'm down here. Yeah. Can I ask a stupid question?
Please.
But for someone who doesn't understand finance and investing at all. But it's a relevant one. I mean, it feels like from all the research we do, over and over again, there are companies that get a little product out here in Singapore, or some foie gras here. It's all a bit financially flimsy in terms of actually some returns, right? So the stupid question is, are you guys making any money? Is anyone actually making any money?
But that's the biggest hurdle, because and I'll be very honest, a lot of VC funds initially invested with the pipe dream, and I won't lie, a lot of entrepreneurs also showed the pipe dream. And the pipe dream was, including Moza in our portfolio, we invested quite early around seed or Series A. And Moza, if you guys don't know, it came from Utrecht, and one of the first cell ag companies in the world, supposed to commercialize 5 years ago, still not there. So again, I think there was a pipe dream wrong, and this is where our conclusion came in, that maybe the slab of meat is not the end product that everybody should be looking at. There are some other beachhead markets which are going into the cosmetics, which are going to the nutraceutical, which are also going to the pharma. And this is where people should start commercializing. I would say that the industry is getting much more saner and should get saner. And your point is actually quite well taken. And my biggest worry, which I keep telling Carolina also, that most of the funds have backed out. There's nobody investing. Actually, interestingly, Finnish Climate Fund, who invested in Solar Foods, is also out. They have closed on the fund as a climate fund. So we are in this crisis of there's not enough money going to be coming. So we also need to think about different financing tools. That's why we brought this term also called green bonds, We think about impact bonds, low interest debt. So different kinds of financing structure, because you can't have research to commercialization if you don't have good tools in your hand. And that actually helped quite a lot with the energy transition industry. So if you want the consumption production transition happen, we need to think about financing tools through and through across the spectrum. Good question. I don't think so. We are making money, but we are also a mission aligned impact fund. So we have our LPs, investors also. But we look at long-term returns. We see that there is a potential because, as you were hearing about solar foods, we are at the cusp of the change. Right now, it's just the industry getting saner, so a lot of companies are just going towards very low valuation, which is actually good for investors, basically, and less pipe dreams.
Thank you. Hi, Andrea from Australia. My question is kind of not about food, but then it kind of is. So I'm very interested in the human organ on a chip technology, and was wondering what sort of, is there much acceptance among regulatory bodies of that as an alternative to animal testing? And if so, could that replace the testing for novel foods in places like the US where an animal testing is demanded?
Possibly, yes. And how much should I give to US? I think US is, the FDA is the only one which has moved forward in terms of approving human organ on chips right now. Emulate, which we have invested in US, Emulating has some approvals. It's a bit of a complicated journey. I think they have putting more as a sandbox for doing drug testing for certain things. But ideally, it should go across the spectrum. What we have seen from the industry, there is a demand. The thing with human organs on chips, if we really crack it as the scientist community, and I think there are still a lot of things in the discovery phase, but if we crack it, there's no point you want to test something on something which is actually not behaving as an animal, as a human. So if you test it on a rat or something, it's not just humane, it's just not good quality, efficient results you'll get. So companies would like to have human organs on chips, specifically for drug discovery, right away. And I think for food, cosmetics, and other industries also is the same case. So there is no pushback. The pushback is going to be more from the regulators, and I think there's still scientific discovery gaps which are existing.
First, congratulations here. Yeah. My name is Guido. I live in San Francisco. I'm Venezuelan. First, congratulations, because living in San Francisco and having had a biotech startup many years ago, a very common problem that I notice in people investing in this space is they are not patient. They expect biotech to behave like software, which is not. And then just a few years on the road, they lose completely patience and they kill a company that could be very promising. So my question is, are you doing anything to educate other VCs about how intricate, how complex this is? Or when you do that, people just walk away because it's too complex?
Good question. I have a very strong sentiment that a lot of founders also want a pipe dream, not just the VCs. A lot of founders were also selling that. I will be selling $100 million worth of proteins by 2019. So it's both sides. We need to do education. It's also the side of more patient capital allocation or patient investing. And also, like, as of now, because we don't have so much control on what other co-investors would be, and a lot of capital has vanished. So right now we are actually trying to help a lot of founders find a beachhead market. So I'll give you one example with a lot of these cell ag companies, and I was telling someone that where we are seeing commercialization again is actually in the cosmetic and the nutraceutical space. And some of these cell ag companies, as cell ag technologies, have been able to commercialize because they produce certain kind of gelation, collagen, which has very good applications there. They have all sorts of amino acids that can go into nutraceutical. The problem is, what I've seen with a lot of entrepreneurs, nobody has given them a playbook to actually go into these beachhead markets. So we are trying to do whatever education we could do because we are here for the long term and we actually just do this. If we exist that if this industry grows. But other investors, there's a huge problem because it's not just we need to educate, they have pulled out. So that's what we need to actually educate a lot of climate investors. If you are not investing in this, you are not doing climate investing. Just putting money into energy transition and electrification is not solving much enough. So I don't have an answer, but we do try to educate like it's a patient. And then you need to also get some strategic investors involved. So we try to get, for all our portfolio companies, have a corporate investors. Corporate investors are more interested in, is there a strategic alignment? They will lose interest, but it's not like they were going to kill it. The other piece is we also try to look for a few other impact investors generally. If it is available, sovereign funds also helps. Pure journalist VCs probably are disappearing every day almost from this space. So we'll see where it goes.
Thank you so much.